Hello, everyone. So before we get started, Third Place Books would like to acknowledge that we are on the unceded ancestral land of the first people of Seattle, the Duwamish people, past and present, and honor with gratitude the Duwamish people and the land itself. So welcome everyone to our virtual event space. My name is Allie. You might recognize me from our Lake Forest Park location, and I am your host for this evening. I am so excited to be introducing Rachel Lynn Solomon and Rachel Griffin here to celebrate the highly anticipated release of Weather Girl. But before we get into the good stuff, on behalf of all of us here at Third Place Books, I just want to quickly thank you all so much for tuning in. For those of you who may not know, we are an independent bookstore with 3 locations in the Seattle area, and as much as we miss having these events in our stores, it has been such a delight to expand this online program to connect readers and authors in a virtual space. So thank you all so much for tuning in and buying books. Your support is what makes all of this possible. If you haven't already purchased your copy of Weather Girl and you'd like to, I will be linking the book in chat. Anyone who purchases a book before midnight tonight, your book will be signed and personalized and sent your direction in the next couple of days. But for those of you in the Seattle area, Rachel and Solomon will be joining us at our Lake Forest Park location tomorrow night at 7 p.m. to do an in-person signing, in person. So if you'd like to come in and grab a copy and have her sign it, we would absolutely love to see you there. And I will be linking more information about that in chat as well. Tonight, we are here for about an hour, and towards the end, we will be taking questions. So if you have any questions, which we very much hope that you do, go ahead and leave those in the Q&A box, which should be either at the top or bottom of your screen. It is different than the chat box, which is great for virtual applause and connecting with each other. I absolutely invite you all to share where you're tuning in from in the chat, and I see some people have already discovered the chat box. Hello, everyone. When it comes time for questions, do make sure that those end up in the Q&A so that we can most easily find them. While you're in our chat and question spaces, I want to remind you to please lead with kindness and refrain from any inappropriate behavior or harassment. For anyone interested, there are auto-generated closed captions available from the menu at the top or bottom of your screen. Please select the live transcript button to enable or disable them. And finally, should any technical issues arise, we will work as quickly as we can to resolve them, and we appreciate your patience and understanding. All right, and now, without further ado, let's everyone get settled in because I am so pleased to welcome back Rachel Lynn Solomon, the author of You'll Miss Me When I'm Gone, Our Year of Maybe, Today, Tonight, Tomorrow, The X Talk, and We Can't Keep Meeting Like This. Her newest book, Weather Girl, is one of BuzzFeed and Parade's most anticipated books of 2022, one of Marie Claire's best books of 2022, and a book we have been processing very enthusiastic pre-orders for since last summer. So finally here, Weather Girl, in which a TV meteorologist and a sports reporter scheme to reunite their divorced bosses. In conversation this evening, I am so happy to welcome back Rachel Griffin, author of instant New York Times bestseller, The Nature of Witches, which is about weather witches and climate collapse, and for which she became a certified weather spotter for the National Weather Service. Her next book, Wild is the Witch, is due next summer. So thank you both so very much for being here. With that, I'm going to pass the stage to our authors. So welcome, both of you.
Thanks, Allie. Yeah, thank you so much. We are so excited to do this and so excited to be in the same room. Yes. For those of you who don't know, I met Rach back in 2016 before either of us had book deals, before I had an agent, and it is like such a joy. I'm getting emotional already. 30 seconds in, it's fine. Such a joy being able to do this in person after being on this journey for 6 years together. So we are here to talk about this delight of a book. I can't wait for you all to read it. It is so good. It is filled with Rachel's signature cleverness and steaminess, and it's just it's like the best hug I just love it so much. And it's also very cool that we both managed to write books about how much we love the weather.
Specifically how much we love the rain.
Yeah, specifically how much we adore the rain. And so just very, very cool to be doing this event with you.
I'm so happy to be here.
So to start things off, I would love it if you would give us a forecast for this evening's event.
Yes, well, so I think that tonight is going to be partly cloudy with a chance of one or both of us bursting into tears before the end of it. And like, I think you're already almost there.
I already did it. Okay, I love it. So I would love to just like start off the conversation by hearing a bit about how you came up with the idea for Weather Girl, what inspired you for it, and how it has evolved throughout the process of, you know, idea to getting it on the shelf.
Definitely. So to talk about that, I have to go back to my first adult romance, which was The X Talk that came out about a year ago. And when we were pitching The X Talk, it's very common to, when you're pitching a romance novel, to come up with some other books that might be in the same universe or related in some way. So I knew I wanted to do some other journalism-centered romantic comedies. And I loved the idea of writing a book about a TV meteorologist. And I will admit, like, the title was kind of the first thing that came to me because I just felt like that would be a really fun, catchy title. It would lend itself to a very cute cover. It's kind of been my dream to have like an umbrella on a cover.
They nailed it.
I know, all those dreams came true. So initially when we were submitting the X Talk to publishers, it included a little pitch for a book called Weather Girl, but that book is not this book. It had a completely different plot. It was really just a few paragraphs of a pitch, and it was about a TV meteorologist who got snowed in somewhere with someone. And like, I absolutely love, you know, any kind of romance where you can trap people together, because there's just so many fun situations arise from that. So the X Talk sold in a 2-book deal. And so I kind of thought, you know, oh, maybe I'll write that book. Maybe I will, you know, finagle it a little bit more. But it wasn't until it was time to start thinking more about that book. So probably, you know, a year, 6 months or so later, yeah, probably 6 months, when I was pitching ideas to my editor for that second book. And I was just really still attached, again, mostly to the title. I don't know why.
It is a great title.
Oh, thank you. But at that point, I came up with the idea for a book that was about a TV meteorologist and a sports reporter who were scheming to break up their unhappily married bosses. And that is actually the opposite premise of the published book. So in the published book, they are trying to reunite their divorced bosses. And in both cases, it's because the newsroom has just become a completely toxic place. But I wrote half of the book where they're trying to break them up. And it was just extremely negative. There was like a fist fight. I hated everyone. So I emailed my editor. I was like, I might actually want to just make this book the complete opposite of what it is right now, because I am struggling to like any of these people. And fortunately, she was on board. So I went back, and it actually did not take that much revising. And I always feel like when you can make a change that is easy, that's usually a sign that it's the right change.
Yes.
Well, not always. I guess sometimes hard changes are the right ones too. But if it's that easy, I'm like, okay, this fits together. And
well, and it's still like fit with your broad, like the story you wanted to tell.
Exactly. So I made those tweaks, and then I was able to write to the end of the book, and I was like, yes, this is the book that I wanted it to be.
That's awesome. I love that. And it's really funny when you're like, oh no, I don't like the characters. Like,
well, I couldn't redeem anyone after the fist fight.
Yeah, so. The fist fight, it was all downhill.
Yeah.
So how has the process for Weather Girl been different than the X Talk? I know the X Talk was like your first adult rom-com, but was the process of writing the two, did you feel like it was different embarking on your second adult rom-com?
Definitely. And I think the main thing is the timing, because the X Talk I wrote not under contract. I was writing it first for myself, just to kind of see, can I write an adult book? Can I write a romance novel? And that book also went through a revision with my agent, a revision with my critique partners.
And it just had a lot more time to marinate before it even got to a publisher. So with Weather Girl, I was drafting, and then the book, I think I might have had a couple critique partners read it alongside my editor, but once I was done and it was polished, it went right to my editor. So the timing was just, it's a lot, I don't want to say crunched, but like the timelines are just shorter for future books under contract, usually. Or if you have like a 2-book contract, usually that second book is, things are a little tighter. So that was the major thing. And we also did a lot more revisions on Weather Girl with my editor, and she had just absolutely amazing insight. Like she 100% helped me find the book that I wanted to write. And we did less revisions or less intense revisions for Weather Girl than we had for the X-Talk. And I think that's just because the X-Talk was already seen by so many people.
Yeah, and it's so great when you have an editor who's like vision aligns with your own and where like it jives with you and they like get your vision for the book.
Right. And then also the big thing that happened when I was writing Weather Girl that did not happen during the X-Talk was that I moved to Amsterdam.
Oh,
so that that also like impacted the process. That happened right when I was in the middle of revising.
Yeah, I am in the middle of, or I just finished my second book, and yes, it is a totally different experience writing a book under contract than it is getting so much time to like sit with the idea and marinate in it. So yeah, I totally resonate with that as someone who just finished that process. Something that I absolutely love about this book, I'm just going to keep showing it because it's so beautiful. But something that I really, really love about Weather Girl is how this book is fully a rom-com. Rach is one of the authors that just, I laugh out loud consistently while reading your books. Like
sometimes when I'm sitting right next to you.
Sometimes when she's sitting right next to me. You're so clever. It's so witty. It's so smart. It's so fun. But you also give us like a very real depiction of Ari's depression, and it's very moving. And I would love for you to just talk a little bit about how you go about writing rom-coms while also including heavier topics.
Yeah, and this is something that I think a lot of people debate in the romance and romantic comedy world, because I think a lot of us are kind of conditioned now to see an illustrated cover and think romantic comedy. And I think part of the reason is because publishing has done such an amazing job marketing those books. And to me, Weather Girl is a romantic comedy. It is absolutely okay if readers don't feel the same way, because I definitely know that writing humor is subjective and reading humor is subjective. I mean, any kind of humor is subjective. But for me, a romantic comedy is really all about the premise. And I always feel like there needs to be some kind of comedic tension or humor like baked right into the premise. So with this one, it's about, two people trying to reunite their divorced bosses and falling in love along the way. To me, there are so many hijinks that could happen and just so many like awkward situations. To me, the premise that feels like a romantic comedy. And then in terms of the execution, it was really important to me to write a character who had depression and was still having this like kind of hijinks filled love story and plot, and that she was able to just have this kind of escapist storyline while still dealing with these heavy issues. And I've seen a few reviews of this book that have called it like a real life romance, like a romance between real people. And that's like really touched me, because that's just 100% what I wanted to do with the book. And I just love that it feels authentic.
Yes, I love it, because like all of us have heavier things in our life, and we're all still allowed to go and have fun and have hijinks and fall in love. And that's what's so moving about the book, is there's nothing about it that feels jarring. It's not like, oh, here's this heavy topic and now I'm laughing out loud. It's just this like one beautiful, all-encompassing book that shows two real people falling in love. It is just like this book is such a delight, you guys. So here's the cool thing about being on the path to publication for so long, is that I was able to become friends with like my favorite writers. So like I'm gushing over this human that I love because she's also one of my favorite writers. But so something that struck me when you were just answering that question is, I was wondering, for you, do your characters typically come first, or is it the premise that comes first?
It's the premise, 100%. Yeah, there might be like little traits that I want to fold into a character. Like I've had a note on my phone for a long time because I'm still kind of a vegetarian, but I was one for 15 years, and I want to write like a hero who's a vegetarian, and like, but it's really hard to just create a book from that. So my premises always come first because I really want to have like a concise one-line pitch that I can, first of all, tell my friends about and hopefully have them get excited. Yes. Because usually when someone else gets excited about a project, I'm like, oh yeah, I definitely want to write that. But also that, one-line pitch makes me think of all the different scenarios and all the different opportunities that the different paths for the book to go down, and different kind of different things that I can do with it. So yeah, definitely the plot, or the premise, I should say. Plot is hard, the premise is fun.
I will say, when I've in the past tried to write books and I couldn't concisely say what the premise was, I've had a much harder time like writing the book in general. So yeah, I love it. And it's fun to like, when a premise really excites you, I feel like you instantly your subconscious instantly starts working on it and what the story could look like. And that's always really a fun part of the process.
Yeah, because you like want to do it justice.
Yes,
right?
Exactly. So something else I really love about Ari is like, so much of Ari's journey is like allowing herself to show that the darkness in herself, the darker parts of herself, and the parts that she doesn't think are worthy of love, and then going on this journey. And oh my God, sorry you guys. Wow, I am. Whew, it's fine. And going on this journey though, where she realizes that all parts of her are worthy of being loved. And I just would love to hear you talk a bit about how that journey was for you writing that, and if it was as rewarding for you to write as it was for me to read.
Yeah, so I think some of that happened organically as I was writing, and I don't know if it was just because this was the first book that I wrote start to finish in the pandemic, and I was depressed. But I also think that I was really going for the metaphor between gloomy weather and like gloomy moods, and there's just a lot of connections between emotions and weather. And as I was kind of conceptualizing Ari more, I realized I really wanted to give her this backstory, and this, whenever I'm writing a book, some people call it like a character's wound or a character's misbelief. There's usually something in their backstory that has made them the way they are today. And that is something I always try to figure out before I start writing. And so for her, I, developed this backstory with her family and her feeling like she could not be open about any of her mental health struggles because it would drive people away. And ultimately, I wanted to write a book that had, positive mental health representation. She's on medication, she's in therapy, and that doesn't mean she is 100% cured, because no one can be. And it doesn't mean that she doesn't have, difficult days. But I think that would have been really important for me as just a teenager, and then also just as a young adult, to see that kind of representation. Yes. I remember growing up, like I had a lot of shame about going to therapy. Like I didn't talk to anyone about it for a long time. Yeah, like I'm very happy with how the book turned out, but it was something that I kind of had to layer in draft by draft, because I think I was talking about this in an event last week, but I think I was almost like protecting myself from getting too deep into it and like sinking myself into those moods. Yes. Because a lot of the depression details came like bit by bit. They did not come all at once.
And I think that like seeing that kind of representation in books is so important. I, growing up, did not have a word for anxiety. And I just thought that, I kind of just thought there was something wrong with me. I didn't know that like, this is actually a thing that people experience that you can get help for, or that you can learn tools to cope with. And I think seeing that told in a healthy way in stories is so important for us.
Definitely. So, and I think part of that is also coming from YA and feeling that responsibility to young readers, like not writing things in like a preachy or a didactic way, but just in a way that is healthy, and while still leaving space for the character to grow. Like she is on medication and in therapy, but she does not tell anyone about it.
Mhm.
So that's something she's able to do by the end of the book.
Yeah. And I also just think showing that as like part of her life and not her whole life. And like she has this whole story and she is this whole fully formed person. And that is one small part of her journey and who she is.
Yeah. And that's something that I always try to focus on too. Like whenever my characters have, you know, whatever else they have going on, if they are dealing with a mental illness or, you know, a physical illness, that is never their whole personality. Because that is not true.
Yes.
That is not true for any of us.
Yeah. So, in thinking about Ari and like her journey and what she needs to learn, enters Russell. The sweetest. I love Russell so much. Russell is a DILF. Am I allowed to say that?
I think so.
It's true. It's
my dad's
truth.
watching. But...
Okay. I apologize, but it is the truth. And I would love to hear more about like your inspiration for building Russell as a character and how you delivered this like perfect plus size hero that like we and Ari deserve.
Thank you. I thought you were going to say, I would love to hear more about DILFs.
Oh, I mean, like, also, if you'd like to talk more about that, I welcome it.
Well, thank you very much. I've really loved seeing the reaction both to Ari and her depression, and also Russell as like a fat character, and that's a word that he's 100% comfortable using. You know, fat character, plus size character. I mean, he even jokes about having like a dad bod.
I love him so much.
So, I think that the romance community in particular is, well, first of all, it's a super inclusive community, and in terms of body positivity, there is so much great stuff with women's bodies. There's so many more women's bodies that we are seeing on covers. Like Olivia Dade's covers are so beautiful, and they have these like, you know, gorgeous illustrated women who are fat, and just absolutely love that. And it's so fantastic to see more and more of that. But in terms of heroes, most of them really just have one body type. Like they are 6'2", they have a 25 pack. I don't know what that would look like. Do you just have the odd one just like hanging? Like
graph paper?
Yeah. And they're just these, I mean, they work out constantly. And that is just not what most people look like. And there's just a lot of also like really negative messages about men's bodies. And I think it's very, very difficult if you don't have a body that fits into that. And it's also just, I mean, it's not realistic. Like when I'm reading romance novels, like I am someone who will always go for a beta hero over an alpha hero. And I like kind of try to make the men that I write like as beta as possible, because I just really like anytime there is more room for more like types of people to see themselves or see their relationships. That is just such a great power that romance has. And this is by no means like the only representation of a man's body like this, but I really hope that we start to see even more.
Totally. And I love it in the context of romance, because it's also like, there's so many really like truly steamy and sexy scenes, and that is so much fun to read and so important, I think, to see.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. So going off of that, like, how do you build out the personality of the hero, right? Like, so I assume Ari kind of came to you first. And do you feel like you kind of figure out like that wound from her and then build a hero that can meet that or work with that?
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of a matter of not like a hero who can overcome that, but a hero who has like his own insecurities. And I mean, I should say, first of all, I spend like 3 days deciding on a name that usually comes first.
Do you use like a baby name website or?
I do. And like, I don't really, the meanings of names aren't as important to me as the rhythm and the names sounding good together.
Oh, sure.
When you have a couple. So I spend way too much time on that. And then I have this like very nerdy template that I've made for myself. That's like character name, hair color, eye color, occupation, like siblings. It's just this whole like profile. And then it eventually gets down to like relationship history, like what they want in a relationship. I feel like I'm a therapist for them almost. You know, like fake social security number. Like, But yeah, and I will try to find their wound too. And I spend a lot of time thinking about like what each character wants, both professionally and personally, and also in a relationship. So some kind of growth that they are going through as a person, and how they can accomplish that, like with the help of a partner. But I never wanted to feel like a partner is solving that problem.
Yes.
And I think especially in this book, you know, Ari has to like do some work on her own before feeling fully ready.
Yes, totally. So I feel like I would really love to talk to you about research. This is the part of the conversation where Rach and I will start waxing poetic about the weather and rain in general. If you have not read the opening of Weather Girl, it's like 3 pages of talking about how much Ari, aka Rach, loves the rain. And it is just absolutely perfect and spot on. And I do think that we should start out by saying that it does not rain in Seattle nearly as much.
No,
as
and
everyone
Ari
thinks.
says that,
Yes,
actually.
Ari is clearing up that, that misbelief.
Yeah, and it's so funny that you say that, because like my husband was saying that Ari is the character who reminds him the most of me. Which I was like, oh God, I don't want to be perceived. But
well, I did remember, like, Rachel and I have talked about the weather long before either of us ever wrote a book about the weather. And we always were like, it does not rain in Seattle. Like, Seattle gets a bad reputation. It doesn't rain that much here.
It does rain, but it's not like the rainiest place in the US. It has the most overcast days, I believe.
Yes.
But not the most rain.
That's true.
Yeah. And so the research I did for this book, the first thing I do when I'm writing a book is I have to draft it on my own without any research, which means I have giant chunks throughout the manuscript that are like, research this, and, you know, details coming later.
Oh, that's interesting. Do you do that mainly because you feel like research makes you lose momentum?
Yeah, it's like, I need to get out the story, even with all those gaps, as much as I can. And I know things will change later, but when I'm writing that first draft, I can't pause for details, because it completely, I would never finish.
Yeah, I'm the exact same way.
So after I did that, I mean, I did do some very basic research, just Googling, you know, TV stations and meteorologists. But after I was done, I first went on YouTube, and there are a bunch of like young women meteorologists who are also like, there are probably a bunch on TikTok at this point, but they document their days in like really great detail. Yeah, so they would take you through, they would just have like a camera as they were like waking up at 3 a.m. and doing their makeup and like doing their hair. And then they would get to the station and give you a tour, and they would be like, okay, I'm sitting down at the weather center and like I'm filling out my forecast sheet. And it was just so helpful.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah. And most of them were like early career, like probably mid-20s. So it was like very similar to my character. So that was so helpful. So I started there, and then I also had a lot of really specific questions that I knew I would need to talk to someone in the field. So I reached out to some meteorologists in Seattle. I talked to someone at Como and someone at Cairo for the Seattle folks who are listening. And I talked to someone who was a chief meteorologist and someone who was at a similar stage to Ari. And they gave me so many amazing details. The book would just not be what it is without them. Like, it would just be completely lackluster. And they let me ask like very specific questions, you know, like, oh, what does this look like when you are standing here? Just things so that I could
really cool.
Yeah, things so that I could describe them. And if it hadn't been a pandemic, I would have absolutely tried to go into a station, but because it was this was the best I could do. But yeah, I just loved talking to them.
Well, and it does feel like, I mean, reading the book, it does feel like you are in a newsroom. I mean, I've not worked for television, but it does feel like this very accurate depiction of what it might be like to work in a newsroom.
Oh, thank you. And I worked in radio, and then I worked, you know, I had internships in print media. So I have not worked in TV, but I tried to, you know, there's always some things you have to fudge for fictional reasons. But yeah, I'm glad that it comes across that way.
And didn't you, as I was reading, Ari has to get up really, really early in the morning. Didn't you, when you were in radio, also have to get up like extremely early.
Yeah. So my first job after college was I was a morning producer for I can tell people who live in Seattle for Cairo Radio, like 97.3. And I had to get to the station at 2 a.m. And this was like right after college, and I was still living in the U District in Seattle. I went to UW. And I remember like driving or like walking out to my car and seeing everyone going out to parties or like coming home from parties, because I lived really close to Greek Row. So that was a weird experience. I lasted like 3 months at that job because it was just not, the schedule was just, I could not do it. I have so much respect for people who do, and Ari loves it. And I think a lot of meteorologists like really thrive on that if they're working mornings, but yeah, not for me.
Yeah, I when I was in college worked at Starbucks, and I had to be to work at 4:15. So I had to leave my dorm in college at 3:45 in the morning. And I was going to school in Seattle, and I was working on the east side. So there's this long bridge that connects the two over a lake. You know this, but all the viewers might not know. And I would roll down all 4 of my windows and be driving with like my hair going everywhere so I wouldn't fall asleep while I was driving to Starbucks, because I'm not a morning person. I'm much more likely to be going to bed at 3:30 than I am to be waking up at 3:30. And did you was most of your research and involving like what it is like as for a meteorologist and what their job is like? Did you do much like research into the actual weather? Because there are a lot of weather puns in this.
Yeah. No, I did, some weather research, but I also felt like it would have been really easy to go overboard with the weather references. Like, I didn't want her to just be walking down the street and being like, I feel like a cumulus cloud. So it didn't get to that point, and we should all be grateful for that.
I thought, listening to you talk to meteorologists, and I took that class with the National Weather Service.
Yes.
It's really cool listening to people who love the weather talk about weather, because they get so into it. And Ari talks about this in the book, but like the weather gets a bad reputation because so many people think of it as small talk when it's actually like so amazing.
Yeah.
So it's been so fun reading about it, and Ari makes that point too about small talk. So.
For sure. No, I always love talking about the rain, and I don't think it's small talk either.
No. Was there anything in your research that like surprised you? Or I know that you had kind of a parallel career in.
Yeah. Maybe not surprising, but like one thing that really stood out to me was when I was talking to the meteorologist who was more early career. She was in her mid-20s, and like her ultimate goal was to work for one of the national shows, like Today or Good Morning America. And she said something that I actually asked her if I could use in the book because it was such a good line, and it's a line that one of the characters says. I tweaked it a bit, but she was talking about the criticism that she gets from viewers with regard to what she wears and just how she presents herself. And I was just surprised because we were having, I don't even know if I specifically brought it up, but I was really glad that she brought it up and that she like spoke about it so openly. And she said something like, I could be wearing a burlap sack and viewers would be like, why did you pick such a sexy sack?
Wow. Wow.
And yeah, I asked her if I could use that line, because I was like, that really encapsulates like misogyny in a nutshell.
I feel like that would be so hard to get used to.
Yeah.
How do you tune it out? Sorry, that's Doppler. Oh wow, so appropriately named. My dog is named Doppler, for those of you who didn't think that I was into the weather enough.
Now we know.
Now you know. But yeah, I cannot imagine just like tuning, like you'd have to learn how to tune that out.
I know. She said that she does tune it out at this point, and it's just something that like she has to deal with, but I cannot imagine it either. It sounds like the equivalent of just only being tagged in 1-star reviews.
Yes. Yes. Oh my gosh. So Weather Girl is such a delight of a book. And this is Rachel's 6th published novel, which is amazing. Again, because I've just been so fortunate to be on so much of the journey with you. What has it been like for you like, what's it like now publishing your 6th novel versus your first? And how has like, do you feel like the experience of bringing a book into the world changed as you've gotten farther along in your career?
So it's a hard question to answer because my first book came out in 2018. So I still very much feel like a baby author. Like I do not feel like I have, you know, all these years of experience, because I don't. But at the same time, like things have moved quickly, and there are definitely things I feel like I just know how to better advocate for myself now than I compared to a few years ago. But honestly, I feel like I used to get so anxious before book releases. And then this past week, I've been totally fine until like a few hours ago. And I was like, I'm nervous.
That's good to hear that the anxiety can lessen as the career goes on. It gives me hope.
It lessens, but then it just like came out of nowhere today. So I guess it just, maybe I'm anxious for less time. I think that I am worrying less about things that I know are out of my control, while still worrying too much about other things that are out of my control. So I think the anxiety just kind of morphs. But it is so weird because my first 2 books released before the pandemic, and this is my 4th pandemic book. So I think that's part of what makes it feel like don't quite believe that this is my 6th book. And then my first 2 books were also quite different from the ones I've been releasing, and they were fairly quiet releases. So I don't know. I feel like I need to probably have like several therapy sessions to process it all. But
it is kind of amazing when you think like you've put out 4 books in this time, right? Because you're going between your YA and your adult schedule. And so 4 books in a pandemic, I just can't imagine. I'm so thankful you get to have this in-person signing tomorrow.
Yeah, I'm so excited. I didn't think it would happen. And I'm just so eager to finally meet readers in person again, especially now that I live abroad, and I know that those opportunities will be few and far between.
Well, I'll ask you just 2 more questions, and then we're going to open it up to audience questions. So there should be a Q&A at the bottom for you to ask your questions for Rach. But piggybacking off of what you just said, how is it writing YA and adult, like in going back and forth between the 2? Do you feel like it's hard to get in the headspace for each one, or has that been pretty smooth? I feel like it's been smooth because you've released 4 of them. It's pretty. So
I think it's been smooth because sometimes, because I do think I need to switch back and forth. I was just talking to my agent like before the holidays, and we were talking about which book I was going to work on next. And I told her, you know, I want to work on an adult book because I just finished revisions on my YA book. So it just kind of feels like I want to go be able to spend more time with like independent characters, and I can just, there's like a little bit more freedom there. So yeah, I feel like it's been smooth. Although I do think that my YA, I have not actually written a book that takes place during high school since my 2nd book, since Our Year of Maybe.
Oh yeah.
Everything else has either taken place on the last day of school, in the summer, or the YA that I have coming out later this year takes place in college. And then the book that I have that I'm going to be working on later this year also takes place in college. So yeah,
I really love that, actually. I think that like that is still such a formative time in our lives. And I'm really thrilled to see that there are more books on the shelves that are being set in college, because it is really, you know, I feel like we changed so much in that time.
Definitely. One of the first YAs, or like recent YAs that I read set in college was American Panda by Gloria Chow. And then also Rent a Boyfriend, her most recent book, is set in college. And I love that so much, because you have this kind of unique independence, but you're still, you know, having so many identity crises. And I feel very fortunate that I'm able to write 2 of them back to back, I guess. Although technically See You Yesterday, my book coming out in May, takes place on the first day of college over and over and over, because it's a time loop book. So
well, that was a perfect pitch, because I was actually going to ask you what's next for you.
Yeah, well, in May is See You Yesterday. It is a YA romantic comedy about a girl who has an absolutely disastrous first day of college. And then she discovers that she is trapped in a time loop, stuck repeating this day, along with this absolutely awful guy who humiliated her in one of her classes. And of course they fall in love.
Of course they do. They have to.
Yeah. And I had so much fun writing it. It's the most like out of my comfort zone book that I've written, because it does have that speculative element. And I really tried to, I researched quantum physics. I do not understand it. So like, if you are expecting physics in that book, it is, I'm
like really impressed that you researched that.
I mean, I Wikipedia'd quantum physics and I was like, this seems hard.
That's hilarious.
And then I tried to read a book by Stephen Hawking, but like I couldn't make it past the introduction. So it's just very dense. But I watched some videos and I found some other research. But so that is what I have coming up next. And after Weather Girl release stuff, once I get back to Amsterdam, I will be working on my next adult romantic comedy, which we should be able to share more about soon, and that I'm very excited about.
Yes, I can't wait. So let's open it up to questions. Let's see. I'm gonna scroll down. So so this is a great question. How do you balance releasing multiple books in a year? Like, writing and drafting? Are you doing that simultaneously, and then how do you balance that with launching the book that's coming out?
So I cannot work on 2 books at once. Like if I have deadlines that kind of overlap, I have to focus on one. Like I used to think that maybe I could do, 1 book in the morning, 1 book in the afternoon. And I just can't do it. Like I need to fully be
so tough.
Yeah. I need to be in that character's head and in that character's voice. So I'm really just kind of ping ponging back and forth based on whatever deadline is soonest. And, prioritizing that way. And, it's worked out well. I mean, my publishers are really understanding. And
are you able to kind of like time your release schedules with your adult and your YA publishers so that you don't have to be working on 2 books at once?
Short answer is no. Because so much of it is, that's not a dig at the publishers. Like if anyone at my publishers is listening, like I love you. But it's more that there are so many factors that go into deciding a book's release date. And, publishers have a clear idea of where the book is going to do the best and where they feel they can give it the most support. So, as an example, Weather Girl is coming out tomorrow, and then my next YA is coming out in May 3rd. So that's 4 months in between.
Yes.
And it's really just a matter of, what kind of works best. And if there's ever anything that is not working, then, my agent intervenes and we kind of figure out what will work.
Yeah,
better.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. I love this question because this is one of my favorite questions to ask other writers, but what part of the writing process do you find the hardest, and what do you do to push through it?
I think the drafting is the hardest because, like I was saying, I just write these kind of vomit drafts where I just get it all out. Yeah. Because I feel like every time I write one, I'm trying to prove to myself that I can write a book. And I shouldn't even say it a book because like it is completely incoherent. I'm proving to myself that I can write something that is vaguely book shaped. And then I just have to trust my future self that I'll be able to go back and revise it. So drafting has always been the hardest for me, but I love revising.
Yeah, I am the same way.
Yeah.
I feel like my entire drafting process revolves around getting through it the quickest so that I can then move on to revising, because that's when I can see the book like start coming together. So I'm the exact same way. Colby would like to know if there are any more books that you want to write in this world.
The Weather Girl world?
I assume so.
Yeah. I was thinking about trying to connect all of my adult books in my next one. So we'll see if that happens. But yeah, I mean, with adult romance, their companions are really popular. And I feel like I have not written a side character that really lends themselves to a companion. I would love to write, companions or like duologies or something at some point, but I think I just have not, I have not made that easy for my future self. Like there isn't really a character in this book that would make sense to do that with. there was one character in the X Talk that might have, but I just didn't feel like it was my story to tell. So yeah, I mean, I'm not, these books probably not, but potentially in the future.
This is an interesting question from Jessica. As someone who has always lived in super sunny places before moving to Seattle, do either of you have any tips for dealing with the gray, especially when it affects your mood?
That's a hard question because I feel like I'm the opposite in that like the sun affects my mood. And I know, and this is a real thing. Like I know other people who have like seasonal depression where the sun
really?
Negatively impacts them. And for me, it's because like I feel there's a lot of pressure to go out and do something and take advantage of it. And sometimes, you know, you're on deadline and like you can't really go out and do anything. And also, I mean, I just burn terribly.
That's a problem for me as well.
And there's just never enough sunscreen. But I mean, gosh, I would say just to like have a place at home that's like as cozy as possible.
Yeah, I think too, like, so I grew up here, so I'm used to the gray and I really love the gray, but I think something really special about the Pacific Northwest is that there's so much greenery here. So even when you're outside and it's overcast and rainy and there's, you know, the sun is nowhere to be found, there's still like so much life. There's so much, it's such a vibrant part of the world, even on the grayest days. So I always try and like get out for a walk and, you know, just get out there and see all of the like lush, beautiful nature that we're really lucky to have here. So, and then also like I associate the rain now with like coziness. So, you know, curling up on the couch and reading a book, or I love to write when it's raining out. Or,
Same.
Yeah, things like that. Kelsey, hi, Kelsey. If you could steal one piece of clothing or jewelry from Ari, what would it be?
That's so funny because I feel like I really live vicariously through my characters when I give them clothes and jewelry. And for Ari, I just gave her a lot of like weather themed jewelry. She actually makes her own jewelry for fun because you can't have too many weather related hobbies. She has one, I think she has a pair of earrings that's like a sun and a moon. And I'm positive I know those exist. So I guess that would be cool. Yeah.
I also, like Ari, am really hoping that brooches make a comeback.
Oh yeah. I remember, I feel like one of like years ago I was trying.
Oh, you totally did. Rach showed up to one of our writing sessions with a brooch on her cardigan and I complimented it. And Rach was like, I really want to make brooches come back. And I really love that goal. I think it's a fantastic goal.
Maybe I will revive it.
Yeah. I mean, you've got plenty of time.
Yeah.
Okay, so what is the best thing of living in Amsterdam so far, and what's some random American thing that you miss?
Yeah, that's a good question. It feels so nerdy to say that the best thing is the public transportation, but it is really, really amazing. And I've been there for 9 months and I don't miss having a car at all. Like I just walk or take public transportation everywhere and it's very flat and everything is very close together. So it's just, everything is very easily accessible. And random American things that I miss. Well, I had some when I was here, but Tostitos hint of lime tortilla chips.
Oh, I love it. I mean, yeah, they are good.
They are, yeah.
Okay, I lost my place. Oh, and going off of that, has anything about your writing process changed since you've moved to Amsterdam?
I was really hoping that I would find like some charming like cafe in Amsterdam that would just be the perfect place to write books. And sadly, I have not, in part because the Netherlands has been in lockdown, on and off. But I have, gotten much better at writing from home. Before the pandemic, I would do almost all of my writing at a coffee shop in Seattle. And yeah, now, I save money because I'm not like paying $5 a day to write, or, $10 if I'm hungry. So, there's that, but I think it's also just, I really tied my productivity to that particular place. And I even joked like, if that place ever goes out of business, then I guess I have to quit writing.
Yeah.
Because I really, I mean, and I don't go there that often anymore, but the place is Chocolati in Green Lake for anyone who is in Seattle. There are a couple other Chocolati locations, and I think the Green Lake one is still there. But yeah, that is where I wrote almost all my books, and I love it.
Yeah, it is a fantastic little shop. So, okay. Sydney says, you've written so many tropes with grumpy sunshine, enemies to lovers, and a single parent. Which tropes are you wanting to write next?
That's a good question. I would love to write like best friends to lovers. I think that would be a lot of fun. I also want to do, I've done this in YA, but I want to do like a virgin hero in adult, because again, I love betas. Just I want to get as beta as possible. What else? I feel like there's one other one that I've been wanting to do, but I can't think of it. Oh, no. I do want to do like snowed in or like trapped somewhere.
Yeah, I really love the being forced.
Yeah.
Where you're trapped together. Emma would like to know, this is a writing question. How do you take an idea and stretch it into the length of a book? When I write, I'm never able to make it to that length. I've only written short stories and was wondering what you do to get your stories to that length.
So outlining is something that helps a lot. And I mean, like I was saying, I'm often writing that first draft, hoping that it will end up being long enough for a book. But depending on what you're writing, there are often like beat sheets which kind of have benchmarks that you would need to hit throughout the book. Those can be really helpful. For most of my books, I start with a romantic comedy beat sheet. And it's actually just like 7 plot points. And I kind of just start from there. I like plug things in and then kind of build out the story from that point. So I think outlining might really help, and just, like making sure you can see, because the beats will tell you, and obviously your story does not have to be married to the beats, but I think it's a really great starting point. It's sort of like a know the rules to break them kind of thing, because I would absolutely never say that you always have to do something, or you never have to do something in writing. Like I truly don't think there are rules except for like grammatical ones, but even those you can kind of play around with for the sake of voice. So I think outlining might really help, and finding like a specific beat sheet. I really recommend the book Save the Cat Writes a Novel.
I was just gonna say that.
By Jessica Brody, and also Story Genius by Lisa Cron. Those are my 2 favorite writing books.
Yeah, I totally agree with both of those recommendations. They're fantastic. And I also use a beat sheet always when I start out, and that plot is not my strong suit. So they just really help see like how the whole like novel can go.
Yeah.
So
I know, like I wish I could just write like 80,000 words of Seattle vibes and kissing, but like
I know.
No one wants to publish that, I guess.
I was joking with my agent once, because I turned in this draft and she was like, so not a ton happens in this book. And I was like, the main character explores and experiences the full range of human emotion. Like a lot happens in this book, but apparently it needs a plot. Okay, so
sorry, who was the fight between one? That's a funny one.
Oh yeah, who was the fist fight between?
So the question was, who was the fist fight between in that first version of Weather Girl? It was between Russell and his boss, who is one of the people that they're trying to get back together. And it was like, I could redeem Russell, but the boss was just like, it was too hard. So
okay, so this is kind of piggybacking off of the last question, but do you have any advice for writers struggling to finish writing their first romance novel? And particularly, how do you overcome the self-doubt that goes with it to get to the end?
I mean, I have that with every book. And it sounds just like such a cheap thing to say, of just like keep writing it. But for me, what honestly gets me through is accepting that it's bad. I have to accept that my first draft is going to be really, really bad. And like, maybe you are watching and thinking, no, she's just being hard on herself. Like, I have posted on Instagram, like, these drafts look like Mad Libs, because like I was saying earlier, there are all these chunks that I'm not filling in. If there's ever a detail that I don't want to write or don't have the time to research, I just, hit the underscore button and it's just like a line. And that is all throughout the book. And it is, I don't think anyone could read it except me and understand what is happening. And honestly, like embracing just the badness of my first drafts really helped me push through. And that is kind of the only thing that helps get me to that next stage.
Yes, I totally agree with that. I always think of the first draft as telling myself the story.
Yes.
And it can be as bad and as messy as it needs to be, as long as I know the story I'm trying to tell at the very end. And also just like understanding that all of us have, like, self-doubt just kind of goes along with the job, and you know, and keep writing and know that you are definitely not alone in that.
Yeah, and that is not to say that your book is bad, but we are so, it's more that we are so hard on ourselves, and it's so easy to think like, oh, this is garbage, I should just stop, you know, it's not worth it. And maybe tell yourself that that's true, it is garbage.
Yes.
But the only way that you can make it better is to finish it. And then you have something that is shaped like a book, and you can go back in and just play with it and do whatever you want.
Totally. And recognizing too that like the published books you've read were not written that way. Like they were all one time a first draft that was messy and incomplete and had, you know, plot holes and, you know, or at least I hope so, because that is, it's just part of the process. Okay, we have time for probably one more. Which one of your books would you like to see as a movie?
I think I have to go with Today, Tonight, Tomorrow, because I just love that book so much. It's probably my favorite. I don't know if you're allowed to have favorites, but I think part of the reason is because my inspiration for that book was two movies, Before Sunrise and Dazed and Confused. And there's just something about a movie that takes place in 24 hours that I think is just so, you just like get so wrapped up in it. And,
I totally agree. Yeah, I too would really love to see a T3 movie.
We'll work on it.
Yeah, if you could make that happen. Do we have time for another one? Let's see. Oh, there's Allie's giving me that.
Do one more. I'd love it.
Let's see. Let's see.
Now it's gonna be so hard.
I know. Oh, guys, sorry. Let's see. This is interesting. Yeah. With writing both YA and adult romance, do you ever consider giving us a grown-up version or a newsletter chapter or a novella of our characters for a future book?
Yeah, maybe.
I love that idea.
Yeah. I feel like it would get like, you know, NC-17, like pretty quickly. So if anyone's interested in that, then maybe, I could see myself doing that.
That's a cool idea. Yeah.
On that note.
Okay. Yeah. And I apologize that you all had there were so many great questions here. So I'm really sorry that I couldn't get to all of them.
Yeah, no, they were so great. Thank you so much for the amazing questions. And I wore my the wrong glasses today so that I wouldn't be tempted to look at myself during the event. So I can't see what's in the chat, but like I can sort of make out today, tomorrow.
That one says I love Today, Tonight, Tomorrow so much.
But I appreciate it so much. Thank you.
All right. So yeah, echoing what they said, amazing audience participation this evening. I love it when you guys blow up the question and the chat. It's so much fun. So we are sort of coming to the end of our time together this evening. So I just want to take this last moment to say a huge thank you to our authors and to all of you who came and joined us tonight. For everyone who has not gotten your hands on a copy of Weather Girl, which I think is actually everyone, but everyone who hasn't bought a copy of Weather Girl, I'm going to link the website again so you're not scrolling too far. I'm also linking more information about our signing tomorrow night. If you can be there, we would absolutely love to see you. Of course, as always, let us know what you thought of this event, either in person or online. We love to hear from you. Rachel, a huge thank you for being here. We are all so excited to finally get our hands on this book. So do you have any last words you'd like to share with us before we say goodnight?
No, I mean, just aside from thank you, it just means so much to me, especially like I said, you know, for this being my fourth pandemic book, it just is like so exciting to be able to do this. But just that you can also get The Nature of Witches if you want Rachel to sign it tomorrow, and that I will also have some X-Talk tote bags and some Weather Girl pencils that I will randomly give out, and cookies. So there's that.
Come for
So
the
exciting.
signing, stay for the cookies.
Yeah.
Wonderful. I can't wait. I will see you both tomorrow, and hopefully I'll see a bunch of you in the audience tomorrow as well. So with that, shall we do the awkward waving goodnight thing?
Thank you so much.
Good night, everybody.